So hi, Emily. Thanks for taking a minute to sit down with us. So you're here in town at the AAMI offices for the ISO TC 198 meeting, right?
Correct.
Concerned with the sterilization of medical devices, and specifically you're here working in working group 2, which is radiation sterilization, right?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
I appreciate you sitting down to give us a little update on what's going on in that world. And before you do that, though, take a minute and introduce yourself to folks that don't know you.
Sure. Well, my name's Emily Craven. I'm a Director of Global Sterility Assurance at Boston Scientific. I've been involved with AAMI since 2009, and until recently I was the co-chair of the Radiation Sterilization Working Group at AAMI. As of January this year, I actually took over the convenership of the ISO TC 198 WD2 Radiation Sterilization Group.
Very good. A little extra work there.
A little extra work,
in your spare time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So for folks that don't know, and I'm one of them, tell me a little bit about just the ecosystem of standards that apply in this area and the work. You know, you're now in this convener role. The work that you're doing, and then and also coordinating across other bodies that are doing this kind of work. So give us a little introduction.
Well, radiation sterilization is a really interesting field because it sort of combines physics and microbiology together. So there's a lot of different groups out there that really have a vested interest in making sure that we do this correctly. So ISO obviously sort of sits at the top of the food chain in terms of setting the requirements to make sure that we do the things that we need to do to have safe radiation sterilization processes. AAMI obviously feeds into ISO, provides some guidance and some direction. But then there's another group called ASTM, and there's an ASTM subcommittee E61, which looks at radiation processes in general. So it looks at it more from the physics, dosimetry side of things. So really what happens is ISO sets the requirements, AAMI helps, AAMI drives, and ASTM provides some methods and some very specific ways to implement those recommendations and those requirements.
Okay, so that makes sense. So Amanda, what do folks need to know about the sort of the strategy or the go forward on how all these things fit together? I know we can't get into the specifics of what's going on inside the working group and the standards themselves, but what are things people need to know that Emily can share with us about the path forward?
I think one of the unique things about the working group that Emily is convener of is that they sat down and they mapped out a strategy for what the document should look like going forward. Some of them were quite old. 11137 Part 1 was published in 2006, so it was time for an update, which is underway now. But they also looked at which other documents within that suite of standards needed to be updated and how. And there was a document that they just completed that went from a technical specification and evolved it into an international standard.
Okay, so there's a lot going on. Does all that work happen at once? Is there a prioritization? How does
that was part of the strategy?
Yeah. What does that look like?
Oh, there's definitely been a prioritization. I mean, Amanda did a good job of describing it. Really was a strategic discussion that we started a couple of years ago, looking at all of these standards, both from an ISO standpoint, but also that ASTM group of standards that feed in and provide some of the guidance and the specific methods on doing things. So what we did is we looked at what is the priority for making sure that we can really be serving the industry, making sure that the guidance and the requirements are up to date and reflect best practice. So part of that was looking at some of our most popular dose setting methods, which fall under the VDMAX standards, and that's the document that Amanda referred to. It actually started off as an AAMI TIR, I think it was 33, and it was basically providing the ability to set doses at less than 25 kilogray and above 25 kilogray. 25 kilogray, for people that aren't familiar with it, is it's sort of almost thought of as the standard sterilization dose when you're running a radiation process. So really what the TIR, which again is TIR 33, so it's been around for a long time, but what it was trying to do is provide more opportunities for different companies to look at alternate doses so that they can have less radiation for their products, or maybe even more if it's required from a bioburden standpoint. So TIR 33 many years ago evolved into ISO TS 13004. So we took the body of that document, took it up to the ISO level, got the consensus of all the different ISO bodies, and made that into a great working standard technical specification that has been published for a while now. But then what we really wanted to do was make sure that internationally, those doses were accessible and available and able to be used by a lot of different countries. So through newer guide and proposal, we said, okay, let's make this into a standard, not just a technical specification anymore. And that just passed earlier this year, which is great. And at the same time, we amended 11137-2, which now points to 13004 as a place where you can find those standards, those dose setting levels. So.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say this area of work has been really good at looking at where the gaps are and not reinventing the wheel with things, with serving up national documents to be a foundation for the international work.
So, and I know that is a lot of the work that gets done is about buttoning up that framework and closing gaps, to your point, et cetera.
And being responsive to real world challenges.
Well, that's
as
what
well.
I was going to ask next. Are there external variables beyond wanting to be very proficient in the way these things are developed and maintained and managed? Are there external variables out there that are driving some of these changes? New science that's developed and
absolutely. I mean, new science is one of them. The other thing is that there's new technologies out there. So radiation sterilization, right from the get-go, we've considered 3 different sources of radiation, which is gamma, X-ray, and E-beam. But up until recently, gamma has been predominant because it's a really great technology and it's been around for a really long time. But what's happened is that there's more and more availability of some of these machine source-based radiation technologies. And what we're trying to do with some of these standards is to provide a framework and the ability for companies to now transition some of their products into some of these other available technologies as they come online. Provides versatility and it provides capacity for companies. So we actually, within the working group at the AAMI level, we drafted TIR 104, which is now published as well. And TIR 104 is specifically geared for companies that are currently processing their products with radiation sterilization to switch to an alternative source, whether that's going from gamma to gamma or gamma to E-beam or E-beam to X-ray. And it's to make sure that we can take advantage of the technologies that are out there now and available.
Yeah.
So what's the advantage of, I understand the flexibility, but what's the inherent advantage in switching to, say, E-beam? Are there things about that methodology that work better with certain materials? Is it a better outcome in terms of destroying the bioburden? What's the thinking that drives some of these changes?
I think what we were conceptually looking at when we were putting this documentation together wasn't about benefits of one technology or over the other. It was really more looking at the availability, and it was looking at providing guidance when you're trying to make some of those decisions. So if you're moving from technology A to technology B, these are the things that you need to look at, and here's some things that you actually don't need to look at. And I think that was one of the really key things, is saying, okay, we put a lot of effort into dose setting. Dose setting is usually a fairly lengthy exercise. It involves, bioburden samples and lower doses to sort of substantiate where you've chosen. If you have product that is manufactured in any sort of typical medical device manufacturer, it's under dry conditions. It's not some sort of exotic thing that has water or some sort of growth media in it. You can take that dose setting method and you don't have to repeat it. And I think that was actually one of the really key outputs of that exercise was to provide guidance in that area. And that's always been provided for in the standards, so that governing 11137-1 standard, but it wasn't really very clear. So what we did with AAMI TIR 104 is we tried to drive down, provide more guidance, more clarity around what the actual requirement is. And now what we're doing is we're taking the output of TIR 104, which is published, and we're using it to actually put that clarity back into that governing document at the ISO level.
Fantastic.
So
these are really practical, I guess would be the term I would use. Yeah. These are hands-on, and sometimes with standards you have that challenge. They say thou shalt, but they don't say exactly how. Sounds like you don't have that problem with these documents. These are very directive, not in terms of one technology versus another, but in terms of evaluating each of the technologies. Here are the ranges. Here are the things you need to do. So it seems like a must-have.
Yeah, so one of the things we're hearing about a lot from industry is the cobalt-60 shortages, and how have standards help with that?
Well, this standard will specifically help that, for sure. But I mean, all technologies have their challenges, right? And we definitely are seeing, it's great to see the growth that we're seeing. We're not going to be in a situation where people are going to stop using cobalt-60 or stop using gamma. It's still the predominant radiation sterilization method out there, and it works really, really well. It's just that as we're growing in different areas and we're growing with other technologies, we want to make sure that people have the option to use cobalt or other technologies as well.
Fantastic. So is there anything we've missed that we should talk about before we wrap up?
Maybe just a little bit about where we are with the revision of Part 1.
Yeah, so that's what we're here talking about this week in Arlington. So we're at a CD stage, so a committee draft. We've got a little less than 300 comments in on the document.
That's a good number.
I was going to say, it sounds like a high number, but that's actually a really good number.
Good engagement.
Yeah, exactly, right? You've got enough engagement that you're getting input from a lot, multiple countries, multiple different perspectives, but not so many that it means that we're on in the wrong direction. But yeah, we're very excited. I would love to be at the DIS stage early next year. And to be able to publish some of the changes that we're trying to implement and be able to move forward. And really, our driving purpose in all of this is to make it easy to use the standards, make the requirements as clear as possible, make sure that we have appropriate guidance. And if that appropriate guidance should actually come from an ASTM standard instead of an AAMI standard, because it focuses in on dosimetry or calibration or some of that sort of more hands-on dosimetry stuff, then we point to that. So that, I think, is the other sort of larger change that we're looking at with this documentation, is that we're normatively referencing now ASTM standards, which is new for this series of documents for sure.
Creating an alignment that wasn't there before.
Exactly.
So if I can be a standards nerd for a little bit, I want to give a little bit of information.
What do you mean for a little bit?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm teasing.
so I got to jump in there with this, but I want to clarify what CD stage means, which is what has just passed. And ISO just recently changed how they do committee drafts or CDs. It used to be a vote, and it would go out to the members of the technical committee, and now it goes out for comment. So that those 300 plus comments that Emily referenced, that is what was received back on the consultation period, is what they're doing now. DIS stage is the next stage, and that will be a vote, and at that point the document could be publicly accessible. So it goes out to all ISO member countries at that point.
And is there a further round once it goes out to all those countries of comment, or is that the final document?
So it's vote and comment, and it is possible that it'll go to a final draft international standard vote after that. Remains to be seen.
Okay. So there's a branch there. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't too nerdy. That was good information.
Good. I'm glad it was helpful.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This was very very interesting to me, and I know other people will find the insight useful. So thank you.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.